Hello, this is Mrs. Davis. This is AP Pre-Calculus. We're working on the unit review before the test, and we are on part 4, solving inequalities. So give these a go, and then you can work through them and see how I did it if you have questions. So here we go. First, we have already factored x minus 3 and x plus 2. And so we can just start right off with our sign chart. And remember, when we're doing rational inequalities, we have to do the zeros and the vertical asymptotes. So I have a notch at 2, and I'm going to put a little asterisk under that because that is going to not be a hard bracket when I go make if it's in my boundary. And then 3 would be my other one. This is -2 and 3. And now I just have to test numbers in each interval. So let's see, if I pick -3, it would be negative over negative, which would be a positive in this section. And then between -2 and 3, there's 0. So I'd have negative over positive, which would make this one negative. And then after 3, I have positive over positive, which makes this positive. So I have my sign chart, and now I just look, where is it less than 0? I'm looking at this line, and it's less than 0 between 2 and 3. So -2 and 3, so -2, and it's a soft bracket because it's an asymptote, and 3, and that's a hard bracket because it is a, I should say interval, by the way, because it is included. It is a 0. All right, let's go on to number 2. Already factored for me, so that's nice. And so I have on the top, I would have a -2 and a 1, and those are zeros. And then I would have a -1 for my vertical asymptote. So now I can test. So between -2, I'll pick -3. That would give me a -4, but squared. So that's going to be a positive no matter what. That will always be positive. And then a -3, that would be negative, and then over negative. So this would be positive. Now -1.5 would still be positive. This one would turn to positive this time, and that would be negative. So I would get negative. And between -1 and 1, that would be 0. So that would be positive, positive, positive. So that would be positive. And then also after 1, it'd be positive, positive, positive. So that would be positive. So it asks where it's greater than 0. So I have 2 sections where it's greater than 0. So, and by the way, it's just greater than 0. So everything will be soft brackets. So it's -infinity to -2, union, -1 to 1, union, 1 to infinity. So the only place it wasn't was between -2 and -1. All right, let's move down to the third one. We do have to factor for this one. So it would factor to x minus 4, x plus 3 over x squared, and it's greater than or equal to 0, so I do have to worry about my brackets this time. All right, and so I would have a -3, that's a 0, and a 0, which is an asymptote, and +4, which is a 0. So testing before -3, I get negative over, that will always be positive on the bottom because it's squared, so I can just go do that. And so so that one would be positive because it's negative, negative, positive. Let's try -1 here. That would be negative, positive, so that would be negative. And then I would say I have 1. Let's try 1, and that would be negative, positive, so that would still be negative. And then after 4, I would have positive, 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 so that would be positive. It wants to know where it's greater than or equal to 0, and so I would have negative infinity to negative 3 with a hard bracket. And then again, it would be a hard bracket 4 to infinity. And number 4 on this page, okay, I have everything factored. So I have a asymptote at negative 2. I have, so let me do that. I have 0 is 0. I have 3 is a 0. And I have 4 is a 0. Okay, no, is an asymptote. All right, so before negative 2, let's pick negative 3. I would have a negative 2 times negative 3, so this little part would be positive. And then this would always be squared. That second one's always going to be squared, and that bottom one's always going to be squared because they're both squared. And so down here, I would negative 3 plus 2, which would be negative. So I end up with negative first. All right, and then the next one, it's still negative, so this would make that positive. This would definitely be positive, and then that's positive, and then negative 1 plus 2, it's going to give me positive, so this whole thing will be positive. After 0, sorry, I'll choose 1. That would make that negative. This is still going to be positive. This is going to be positive. And then 1 plus 2 is going to be positive. And so I would have negative here. There's only one negative. Looking at 3.5, this would be negative, positive, positive, and 3.5, that would be positive. So this is positive. And then going back to 4, this would be negative, positive, and then this would be positive, and this would be positive. So we're back to a negative. I did this one wrong. I don't know why I said that. This is 3 positives, 1 negative, so this is negative, and that's negative. Okay, so we only have one place that's positive. It asks where it's negative. Soft brackets all the way because it's just less than. So we would have negative infinity to negative 2, and then from 0 to 3, and then from 3 to 4, and then from 4 to infinity. Now we have to use the breaks here because it's a 0 at 3, and so it's not, each one of these stops at the 0. Okay, and this one stops at the asymptote, but that stops at the 0. And that one is at the 0. And so those zeros are not equal to, this says less than 0, so we can't use those as hard brackets anyway. So let's look at this last one. Oh, we're done with that one. Okay. I think I can do just a couple more in this video. We're just asked here in part 5. Well, let me stop since it is a different part. Okay.